mock draft. Lord help us. There you go. Not been waiting to hit that button. All right. So first things first, this isn't really a mock draft. I say it every year. It's sort of a watch list. And I think that's an important way to think about it, because at the end of the day, last year I had Spencer Rattler up there, Sam Howell up there, who we mentioned earlier. And clearly one guy got benched and the other guy got drafted in the 5th round after all his teammates left for the NFL year before, and he sort of struggled. So that's one thing. The draft order is based on reverse Super Bowl odds by Sportsline. So you can tweet at RJ White if you want to. Be angry about that, because I think he's looking for more interaction on Twitter. So he might appreciate that. But it has nothing to do with me thinking the Jets are going to be terrible. Honestly, I think they'll probably be much better than they were. So at the top. So at the quarterbacks, because that's sort of where we always start. Last year was a rough go for the quarterbacks, and that played out in the actual draft. Josh, I'll start with you. And let me ask you a specific question, because you're Kentucky. You focus on Kentucky recruiting and the Wildcats during the fall. What are your thoughts on Will Levis, Penn State transfer? Pete Prisco loves this guy. I put him in there just so he would shut up about it. I watched a little bit of him yesterday while I was taking my son to a doctor's appointment. I watched a little bit of the Mississippi State game. Where are you at on Will Levis?
I think he probably is going to be a first-round pick.
Yep.
He's got great size. He's got great arm strength, maybe the best in the class. I was at their pro day this year, and he was actually throwing to some of the guys. And he had this one play where he rolled to his left and threw it about 65 yards. Didn't have to show off because it's, the scouts aren't there to see him, but you could kind of see the scouts exchange some glances like, this guy might be something this coming year. But he's got to get his lower body mechanics a little bit more in line with what his upper body is doing. I think that's been the biggest issue so far. I was actually encouraged with how well he uses his eyes to manipulate the defense. Great toughness. He's endeared himself to the team and the community. He's a great leader. Smart guy. He's going to be 24 years old this summer that he is drafted, which, as a quarterback these days, that's still going to give you a decade of playing time. But some teams that are more analytically inclined may take that into consideration. But I think he's got all the traits that you look for in a potential first-round pick. He's just got to get the lower body married to the upper body, and I think he's, potentially the first quarterback off the board, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I'm really excited for Josh to be covering Will Levis next year. Like, I'm going to certainly dive into all his film. You will too, Ryan. But the fact that we have like a Kentucky guy that's watched every single snap already and knows Will Levis in what will be or what should be a really much stronger quarterback class. I'm really excited for it, especially like you mentioned, Ryan. We were just like, this quarterback class isn't very good. We kind of tried to hype it up. I think we were maybe all a little bit incorrect on where these players will be picked at the quarterback spot, of course. But to have Josh being able to break down Will Levis, I think will be a lot of fun. And I agree with him. A little sneak peek. I have my mock draft coming out Monday. I have Will Levis going number 1 overall because of what Josh mentioned. I think the size and the arm talent will really allow teams to gravitate toward him. He just kind of has that physical makeup of number 1 overall picks in the past.
So I'll ask you, Traps, and we'll just circle back around here. You mentioned you have him going first overall. Anyone else you have your eye on in that class? I had 7 guys going just, for shucks and giggles, as the kids say.
Yeah.
CJ Stroud was my first going to Detroit. But again, the pairings between the players and the teams don't really mean much. We'll find out more once the season starts. But who else do you like?
I certainly CJ Stroud and Bryce Young. I think their poise that they showed under pressure in big games very early in their college career, impeccable. And with CJ Stroud, I think his down the field ball placement, like that he showed against Michigan and then in the Rose Bowl against Utah, there was a bunch of like, holy shit throws in that game where I was just shocked that he was able to fit him through tight windows. What I'll say too, that I just checked yours, Ryan, and I'm not sure about Josh's. I'm assuming it was close. Your mock draft last year in May, and this is a watch list. We're not pairing these teams with players necessarily. That's not really the aim of it. You had 12 players who ultimately were first round picks. I had 11. I'm sure Josh was in that vicinity too. So
Josh had 2. I just did the math.
That it's easy for people to dismiss these and say they're kind of ridiculous, but I think framing it as a watch list makes a lot of sense. And it's not like one or two of these guys are going to go in the first. That's about 1/3 of the first round. We ultimately pegged that usually have hype and then live up to it and then go in the first round. So that's just a good kind of stat that I wanted to put out there, that I would say between 10 to 15 of these players will ultimately go in the first round. But I think after Will Levis, it's Bryce Young, CJ Stroud. I really like Anthony Richardson too from Florida.
Yep.
Certainly hasn't showed it on the football field yet in terms of like big time production. But early in the season, before his hamstring injury last year, he had like an 80-yard touchdown run on a keeper. He's really got a strong arm. The arm talent is there. Malik Cunningham will be like a super duper senior, I think, at Louisville. He's very athletic too. Those two other guys outside of the marquee top three with Levis, Stroud, and Bryce Young feel like they could ultimately be first rounders. And it does feel like I think Caesars has it at 5.5 or 6.5 over under quarterbacks in the first round. That feels like it could be that kind of 2018 type super hype quarterback class that I think will do a lot better for our traffic at CBSSports.com.
For sure. Josh, let me ask you about Spencer Rattler. Like, I'm just going to keep putting him on these mock drafts until he finally gets drafted in the first round. How do you feel about him leaving Oklahoma for South Carolina, and in terms of enhancing his chances? Do you think he's going to be able to do it above the neck, or is it going to be same old, same old?
Well, I think that's ultimately what we're trying to find out. I mean, it's kind of hard to imagine going from Lincoln Riley to just about anybody else is going to be an upgrade for him. But I don't know, what kind of emotions he was going through. They obviously had this highly touted quarterback prospect in Caleb Williams that had come in behind him, and maybe he was feeling a little bit of pressure. I don't know. So all I can do is speculate, but this is a guy that certainly has the talent and the capability to be an NFL draft pick. And now he's in a fresh situation where he's not going to get a lot of pressure from the options behind him, and he's got a fairly good supporting cast. So he's going to have a good opportunity to kind of change the narrative around him this year. But I'm a little bit more gun shy than you are at putting Rattler in the first round.
The one point that I want to mention from that, I think this will be a fun case study to see a quarterback go from that Lincoln Riley super creative air raid offense that has produced multiple number one overall picks, tons of productivity, to just like a quote unquote normal offense. And like, we will see, it's the ultimate litmus test. Was Spencer Rattler's freshman season that pushed him into the first round of a lot of these way too early mock drafts last year? Was that simply just the byproduct of being the quarterback in Lincoln Riley's offense? Or is he truly like a transcendent type quarterback? I know he was a big recruit, but I'm just excited to see him in an offense that's not so quarterback friendly like Lincoln Riley's offense is.
I'm trying to, so let's see. Who is the Georgia quarterback that transferred to West Virginia? What's his name? The former USC guy. I can't find his name real quick. It was
JT Daniels.
Yeah, so JT Daniels.
He's on his like fifth team.
JT Daniels is at West Virginia, and less than an hour away, is Keaton Slovis at Pittsburgh, former USC guy. So the USC quarterbacks are all over the map, and there's a chance they'll be playing each other. All with the portal transfer, all that other stuff, which is something else to keep an eye on. All right, Josh, give me a deep dive. Give me your Joe Burrow, Kenny Pickett quarterback that's going to come out of nowhere that folks may not know about, that might have a chance to earn his way into the first round and like Kenny Pickett, go to a team that's probably going to win the Super Bowl next year.
Yeah, I'll give kind of one leftover comment on Levis before I move on here. He obviously had Liam Cohen as his offensive coordinator last year. Cohen has been hired as the Rams offensive coordinator for the coming season. Cohen's replacement at Kentucky is Rich Scangarello, who has been a quarterback coach in the NFL for quite a long time. So he's going to get good coaching this upcoming season. So you have to be excited about that and what that could mean for Levis's future. The quarterback I want to talk about is Miami's Tyler Van Dyke. I had an opportunity to watch him recently. Maybe we would have talked about Devin Leary from NC State if Brinson had actually shown up for the podcast, but we're not going to do that. We'll talk about a different ACC quarterback instead. And I think Tyler Van Dyke is a guy that, throws with touch and accuracy down the field. He's got good size, maybe not some of the mobility that others in this class are going to have, but you see the type of plays that he's able to make with his arm. And I think for that reason, he's going to be a first round consideration for many teams next year.
Yeah, I had him in this mock draft thing here. What do you got, Traps?
How about Emery Jones, who just transferred to Arizona State? He was the big recruit that actually was able to fend off Anthony Richardson at Florida to be the starter there. And with Emery Jones, he's like 6'3", 220, 230 pounds. Like, he has the size of what teams normally look for in first-round quarterbacks. The athleticism is there. He's never been able to put it together as a passer, but I wonder, with Herm Edwards there at Arizona State, a lot of former NFL coaches on that staff, maybe if he has a decent season or a strong season without there being a ton of expectations at Arizona State, Emery Jones could be someone that maybe won't ascend to be the number 1 overall pick, but that we could be saying, hey, look, this was a big recruit. The athleticism's there. The size is there. Now he's finally put it all together in his final season on a new team with a new program.
So I have 3 players here, and I'll start with the smallest. And I do wonder now if teams are going to start shying away from small quarterbacks, because this year's class had plenty of small quarterbacks, and none of them went early. But I'll start with Talia Tangavaloa, who actually he's not a bad player. I watched him last year, and then I can't remember the game, but he threw four interceptions. Prior to that, he looked pretty good, and he looked like he had a better arm than his brother, Tua. I don't know if he'll be a first-round pick, and he's also only 5'11", so that's something to consider. But he flashed at times. I don't think he's a bad football player. So he's 5'11". That's a concern. But KJ Jefferson at Arkansas is a big kid, and he's athletic, 6'3", 245, and he moves certainly better than the 245 indicates. I want to see what he does this year. And then finally, Tanner Mckee is 6'6", the quarterback out of Stanford. And he got some buzz during the fall. He came back to school, which I thought was probably the right decision. If Davis Mills had come back to school, we've said this plenty, he probably would have been the first quarterback taken in this class. He's still the Texans starter, so it worked out for him. But in terms
what about Jake Haener?
Jake Haener, you guys both talked him up last year before he returned to school. Did he transfer, or is he still Fresno State?
I think he removed himself from the portal. Josh would probably have a better grasp on that than I would, but I think he was going to, and I never saw that he landed somewhere else. He's another smaller type, but made a lot of big-time throws and kind of has that, if you want to just label every small white quarterback Baker Mayfield, he kind of has that Baker Mayfield kind of toughness to his game.